Hello and welcome to the Sexient Being Sessions. Today we're here to talk about going primal. So, this can be for your personal practice, your personal explorations actually with a partner, or just for helping you embody your primal side and find more acceptance, understanding, and connection with this part of yourself. I'm Alix Pruett, a certified sex, love, and relationship coach with a BDSM and kink focus. I work with men, women, and couples plus who want to transform their old patterns, pain, and beliefs so they can create thriving relationships that are deeply connected, playful, and fulfilling within themselves and with others. So, this topic of going primal is very near and dear to my heart, especially in the last 6, 7 years of my personal exploration and journey into the idea of the self. Um, our primal nature is something that gets incredibly repressed as we are moving through our lives, as we move from children into being teenagers and adults. There's a lot of domestication that happens within our systems. We learn all sorts of different rules and regulations of how we're supposed to be, and our more animalistic side kind of gets put on the back burner and set aside, um, to where we don't connect with it as much, even though it really is this very deep, integral part of each and every one of us. Now, if you don't believe that humans are animals, then this episode may not be for you because you're going to have a lot harder time breaking out of the conditioning that says that you do have this animalistic side to yourself. So, what we're talking about here, at least when it comes to sexual interactions with a partner, is where you feel that you can growl, right? Or make any slew of non normal, verbal speech noises and having those be completely acceptable. Maybe that's a purr, right? Maybe that's low rumbles or just other types of sounding that come out of your body that aren't this controlled space where they have to form words. Um, this can come down to actions while you're in a sexual play space, like clawing or scratching your partner, biting. The biggest key to any of this really comes into getting consent from your partner. Like, have conversations beforehand about what it is that you're wanting to play with, right? When it comes to primal play. If there are things you don't want to experience, right, then have those discussions as well. If there's things that are maybes, we want to have the conversations around soft limits, hard limits. If you don't know what these are or you want more information on them, please go back in the playlist that we have for this podcast because there is specifically episodes on hard and soft limits and a lot based around consent, creating healthy boundaries for yourself, things along those lines, along with access to amazing and free tools. So, what else can this play into? This can come into your personal pleasure practice in connecting with your primal body. And actually, your personal pleasure practice is kind of where I recommend starting, especially if you have discomforts around sounding and just letting that sound move out of your body when you're having sex. um, or you feel embarrassed about what that may be, even though you feel this desire or this urge to let sounds move out of yourself, you may be holding those back, especially if you find that you are immensely quiet during play spaces. Um, there may be some little primal urges underlying that you have learned to tamp down and kind of repress over time. If that doesn't resonate for you, please leave it. That goes for anything I say. Like, if anything feels too overwhelming, it doesn't sound right for you, then then explore it on what level you're comfortable exploring it. You don't have to go into these things just because I am a sex, love, and relationship coach saying this may exist for you, right? Explore these things because you feel called to explore them and you identify with with what's being brought up here in some way. Um, yes, it can also be the urge to bite and claw. Um, One of the ways I personally end up connecting a lot with my own primal and my own personal practice is through breath work sessions. And this is not breath work where I'm in a meditative sitting state. This is more of an active breath work where I'm moving my body and letting my body move just however it wants to. I'm not thinking about it. And you can go through this by doing shaking exercises where literally you stand there, you take some deep breaths, and you bring your focus again to the breath. It is a breath work practice, but you just kind of jump up and down and let your body shake and move erratically. Like it's not movements you can think about making happen. Like you can initially think about it, but then you just kind of let it flow and you let those things come up. If you start noticing a certain area of your body, bring your focus to that area of your body. If that area of your body could make a sound at that time, what would that sound be? You can start incorporating these things to bring further into your practice of your primal self in sexual dynamics as well when it is partnered. But I really want to invite people to do this on your own first, especially if you have trouble connecting with your primal side, with your more animalistic side, because it can feel overwhelming or scary. There may be shame associated with those aspects of yourself. And this is about building a safe container within yourself so then you can bring that on a conscious level into play spaces with others. I tend to find that when we approach things from an unconscious place, we're more likely to kind of dissociate from the experience that we're in, especially if it's an aspect or part of ourself, an identity that is harder for us to connect with, or if there is more shame or guilt, fear, hurt associated with that part of ourselves, because there's a lack of safety in us embodying that. And so doing little steps to help get there can be immensely helpful in building that safety, in building your ability to be present within your own body, within your own experience during these other types of play, and where you're actually going into different mental states, different ways of relating and sensing the world around you. Now, there are so many examples around how we get conditioned to not connect with our primal. I personally, I guess the best way to describe it, at least for me at this point in time, is like the brain is not actually segregated into these defined groups, but that you have like your primal body mind, you have your emotional body mind, and then you have the like rational thinking mind. And a lot of the times our society tends to give this domesticating quality that being in the rational mind is really the best and only option, right? There's been long-standing information that tells us that certain emotions are weak, are not okay to experience, to feel, to have, to be, to express. Common ones: anger, sadness, jealousy, right? Well, when we're not allowed to connect with those things, or we end up getting a narrative that tells us it's not safe to be that thing, then we disconnect, right? the same thing happens with this idea, the concept of the primal body mind, as far as like not being able to like yell and scream and vocalize or run around like a crazy little animal as a kid, climbing trees, um, throwing rocks, like preferably you're not throwing rocks at people, but it's our primal body is very associated with our stress response as well, going into fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And there can even be shame wrapped up in those things. So some of this can actually take quite a bit of work to kind of unearth so you can fully drop into this space and feel safe. And that's okay. But until you decide that it's the right time for you to start playing with it, to start exploring it, to start getting curious about it, it's likely that there are going to remain blocks to being able to connect with it because, again, there are layers of shame, there are layers of fear, hurt around giving yourself that space of connection within you. So it is perfectly normal to have primal responses. I honestly find that um, our intuition is very closely linked to our primal body, right? So, one of the ways as a young child that this can kind of start getting conditioned out of you, or even told that it's wrong on some level. And this isn't parents trying to do it, it's them actually more than likely trying to meet social norms. But let's say you go to an aunt or an uncle's house or a grandparent's house, you go to a family event, right? And as a young child, your parents are like, oh, give your Uncle Dave a hug or give your Grandma Sally a kiss, right? But it's a no for you as a kid. And like you may let your parents know it's a no. And maybe that's a verbally with words. Maybe that's just in your body language. But your parents or whoever it is around you are saying, well, no, go do this thing. It's rude if you don't do this. It's bad if you don't give them this thing. Like you need to give them this thing. And there's that pressure on a very like uh subconscious, like rule building level. You're being told to not listen to whatever your intuition is and what's right for your body at that point in time. And it's those little things that can start building these narratives around, again, domesticating your system, that you need to behave these ways in these certain social situations, and generally putting your own needs or desires on the back burner to make everyone else happy. Primal play is about very much so connecting with those needs and desires, listening to your animal body and being present with it. Um, let's see, I had a great conversation at one point in time. I tend to frequent different swingers, sex, kinky events in my area, and I had this really amazing conversation with a guy, and it was just really fascinating for me to see, especially after having moved through so much of this work. Um, he was talking about how when he's playing with partners, he will sometimes feel this desire to growl and he won't do it. And I got curious and I was like, "Oh, what comes up for you that you don't let this growl move out of you?" Because personally, I find that hot as fuck. And he was like, "Well, I'm scared it's going to scare them. Like I don't want to scare them that this growl comes out of me." And my recommendation again in that is like, hey, so if you're concerned that this is going to scare a partner, then maybe ask them first if they have any issue with that, or there's anything that comes up for them. Tell them it's something you'd like to explore and see if they're open to it. If they're not open to it, they can tell you no, that they don't want to do that. But give yourself the space, the opportunity to start exploring it rather than just saying, this is going to be too much for somebody else. It's very likely that you got that story from somewhere along the line and your body kind of integrated it to be the reality of the way the world works, where it may not be at all. Again, in that situation, he's saying, oh, this would be too scary for a female sexual partner to receive. And I'm sitting there telling him, that's hot. Do that thing. Try it. You're not you're not strangling the person or causing them like direct harm. And like you can also always ask for consent, especially if it's something that you're scared about or worried about. Also, discuss safe words if you're not using other like common signals of stop, no, slow down. Implement safe words. Like those things are important so that you have cues that you can recognize with your rational mind, with your emotional mind, with your primal body to say, okay, I need to step back, things need to slow down a little bit. Um, but again, there are different perspectives, and a lot of the time they are based on narratives and kind of this. Oh, why is the word evading me now? Domestication of our systems throughout the course of our lives. Uh, just as a forewarning, going into primal states can definitely tap you into a different type of consciousness, an altered state of consciousness in ways. Um, and without having other intoxicants involved, it's a different way of bringing presence to your system, to your experience. A lot of the time, when you're very tapped into your primal body, you're very in tune with what your needs are. You're very in tune to the environment around you, to your five senses, sense of smell, taste, touch, hearing, and sight. Right? Those things might even seem more enhanced than they typically would. You may also be more in connection with your emotions. You may feel a burst of rage come forward more easily, or a wave of rage. Um, if you've had it repressed for a long time, it may come forward as more of a burst. Again, that's where creating the spaces in your own pleasure practice or just own personal, like meditative practice can be so valuable because you learn how to bring presence. You learn that you can bring yourself back to a grounded space, even when these feelings, these emotions, these sensations have been more highly activated, to be grounded and just notice your experience. Speaking on that note, there is a really phenomenal practice that I have put together that is completely free to access. Um, and you can join the Sovereign Dom email group, and you're going to get a series of 5 emails through this email string talking about uh, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses, right? Talking about what happens when we end up repressing certain emotions, creating this disconnect within our own body. The emails mainly focus on the topic of anger, but you can really replace anger with any emotion you deem to be a bad or unacceptable emotion. Same with even like things that relate to the primal. So you can take that and bring that knowledge forward into a lot of different areas. And in that email sequence, there is one of the emails that's like, okay, now let's embody it. Let's put this into practice, because while a bunch of information can be valuable, there's a much bigger difference when you actually get to step into the experience. And it is a guided meditation. So it will talk you through the steps, any tools you need for that space. Again, completely free to access. Just pop down to um, my resource links, and it's in there under Sovereign Dom or SD email group. Um, okay, so getting back on track away from free access to other guided resources, what are some other ways that you can connect with your primal? These can be fairly simple, right? Um, but they may be harder, especially if you're very used to being in the very rational side of your mind. It's probably going to be a thing that takes a little bit of practice and you continuing to do them over time so you can build upon that skill set. Now, one of the top ways I recommend is actually by connecting in with your five senses. So you can sit down quietly in a space. The biggest thing here is bringing yourself present and focus. So if you have devices, please set devices aside unless it is like the guided audio that you get free access to that is giving you step by step, like, okay, like do this for a couple minutes, right? And guiding you in a very embodied experience. Turn off TV. You can have like music going in the background, but I'd honestly recommend that it doesn't have words to it necessarily. Maybe like some shamanic drumming music or other like tribal type music tends to at least resonate for me when it comes to being in very primal states. Um, but what you're going to do to start is just sit in your space to help give that extra like layer of safety to your subconscious, your unconscious mind. You can actually lock the door of whatever like room you're in to kind of set this container of a singular safe space. But from here, you're just going to look around you and really fine tune focus with your sense of sight, right? If there's wood grain around you, notice the wood grain. If you're outside in nature, that's a really great one because you're literally looking at natural objects. But really look into the color, look into the patterns that exist within the wood. Um, Notice differences in shadowing and shading, light and dark. Just again, very nuanced focus on the sense of vision, right? Then the next one you would go into is your sense of hearing. Focus on what you hear in your immediate space. And maybe you don't have music playing or anything else, and respectfully, the room's quiet. You can hear your own breath. So try to hear your own breath. You can potentially hear your own heartbeat. You can bring your focus to that. If there's any sort of movement in the space around you, like a clock, right? There's usually a very subtle noise that comes from the clock. And you can just slowly start expanding your sense of hearing from the space immediately around you to the room that surrounds you, to the house, to the street. And again, just bringing more and more nuanced levels of how you're able to focus on your sense of hearing. For the sense of touch, you can actually touch your own body. And this is really what I recommend. But if you don't feel comfortable touching your own body, find different textures just on the surfaces immediately around you. Maybe you're laying with a cozy blanket or sitting with a cozy blanket or on a leather couch, um, or you can feel wood grain of floors under you. You, again, are welcome to touch your own body as well. It doesn't have to be other objects, but just bring your sense of touch very highly to things you can touch around you and the nuanced differences between them. And then you can also bring your sense of touch to things your body is touching as well. So if you are seated on the floor, where your body meets the floor and what that feels like. If you have clothing touching your skin or other fabrics touching your skin, what that feels like. If you have skin touching skin in areas. So, like right now, I'm sitting cross legged on the floor and I can feel where my skin is touching skin from my legs being crossed, right? And again, you can bring that all throughout the body. Again, just focusing your attention on the nuanced sensation. It is very likely that you're going to have different thoughts pop in as you move through each of these senses. That's completely normal. You don't need to fixate on them. You may wonder if you're doing this right. Like, just know there's no doing it wrong. You're learning a new skill and it takes practice and it can take time, and that's all right. You're letting down a certain part of your thinking rational mind, again, to connect very deeply within your physical body and your other sensate reality, into your felt sense, into what's coming up for you, what's actually present here in the moment. For the sense of smell, you can focus on the scents that do already surround you in your space. Or if it's helpful for you, if you have a small bottle of essential oils or a candle that you really enjoy the scent of, um, or other things along that nature, maybe you have a vase of flowers, right? You can focus on smelling those things just so you can actively know that you are engaging your sense of smell and not just imagining it. Um, and then same goes with sense of taste. You can just focus on whatever you're able to taste in your mouth at that time. Again, dropping into more and more finite realizations and noticing of that nuance. Or if you're having a hard time doing that, then have some like fresh fruit that you can take a bite of, or little bits of like cheese or meats or something that's delicious for you, where you can focus on the different flavors as that passes through your palate and the different taste sensations coming up. And again, it's a practice, it's going to take time, but you're really allowing yourself to bring in this present moment experience with each of these senses. This alone can help really tap you into your primal system, right? If that's not doing it for you, if that's like maybe too slow paced, I also understand that. For me, one of my favorite ways to get into um, my primal body and just very much so this like flow state where I feel very connected across my uh, primal, emotional, and rational minds is actually through dance. But dance was also one of the biggest areas that helped connect me with my primal body. And this isn't choreographed dance, it's taking erratic movements, right? And just allowing my body to move. Um, I will actually go out into like a club I know locally, and I've had many people come up to me and be like, how do you even move your body that way? And I look at them and I'm like, I have no idea. I just let my body move. And so, a great way you can start this is literally by doing what I was talking about earlier. Just turn on some music. Um, Again, like it doesn't have to be only instrumental, but primal music and especially drumming can resonate really well for our primal nervous systems. Um, there's actually some research that exists, and I'm not completely clear on the details, but There's certain drum patterns that go along with shamanic rituals that tend to resonate very well for helping us enter into altered states of consciousness as well. If it interests you, then please go look it up. It's just something I read a handful of years ago when I was looking into to different ways of entering altered states of consciousness and different practices that have existed around um, altered states and healing journeys and things like that. But yes, instrumental drumming music, great. If you really can't get into that, doesn't have your body feel like it wants to move, then find just something that resonates for you that your body wants to move to, right? If you have a favorite song that like even your toes want to tap to, right? And you're not a dancer, you wouldn't qualify yourself as a dancer, that's okay. To me, that little toe tap is your system like saying, I want to move to this, right? Even if it's on a very low level. The reason I bring this up is because for me, dancing was something that I consistently felt drawn to doing for a very long time. I also carried an immense amount of shame about letting my body dance and move. And this again came from my own domestication, my own stories that got built as I was raised from a child through teenager into an adult. But I wouldn't let myself dance. And so the way I actually even started dancing was just solo dance parties at home. And again, like being all weird and janky about it and letting my body move however it wanted to. One of the practices I really utilize right now is incorporating my different like levels of my chakra body. If you're not familiar with chakra points, this may not make sense, and that's okay. If it sounds like something you're interested in, then I definitely recommend going and learning more and researching more on those in particular. But the the main concept of chakra points is there are 7 primary ones: your root chakra, your sacral chakra, your solar plexus chakra, your heart chakra, throat, third eye, and head. So pretty much it's going from the base of your pelvic floor all the way to the top of your head for where these primary chakras exist. And then what I do in that is I will actually start dancing with my main body focus on my first chakra point, so the root chakra at the base of my pelvic floor. I will focus on sensation there. I will primarily allow the movement in my body to start happening at this point of my body. And then as each of those spaces feels more open to joining in, I will slowly move up the different chakra points to or until I get to the crown of my head. And usually if I can enter like that state fully without getting caught up or too distracted by thoughts or being insecure or other things, then it enters into this really beautiful flow state of an experience, and actually for me really taps me into this very integrated space between my primal emotional and rational minds, again where I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, but I can bring full presence to being in that space and being in the experience. Sometimes I start dancing and I get about to my heart or my throat chakra, and like my body's like, nope, we're done. I stop feeling the music that the DJ is playing, or my body feels too tired at that point, and I stop. Like, I don't need to go any further at that point. And again, it's just getting to notice where I was at and bringing that presence while I'm there. So, you can do that by tapping into your 5 senses. You can do that by dancing, right? Really, any kind of movement that you don't have to think about, but you can bring your presence to is really amazing for tapping into the primal body, in my opinion. Again, that's where I like using breath work practices as well. Those may not even incorporate music, and that's just kind of like letting my body shake, jump up and down, move erratically in ways I'm not thinking about it, and paying attention to what those movements feel like in my body. And again, just bringing that notice, bringing the awareness to like my right arm feels like it wants to flap up to the side like a big wing, or now it wants to like slap my left shoulder. Um, I've was mentioning drumming before. I've actually found times where I was in very embodied primal states and I was using my body as a drum. So it's a very rhythmic, like um, rapping and tapping on the body. And generally, if there is music, that will go along to the beat of it. And it just happens. Again, it's not something I can think about doing. When I try to think about it, my body doesn't respond. It's just the natural thing that wants to flow out of it. And it's allowing that to happen. It's allowing that expression and allowing yourself to bring presence to that expression as it moves, to just notice, to get curious, to pay attention to the sensations, the emotions, or whatever's arising in that moment. Um, so there's also the free resource. There are definitely some great Taoist based practices that men can enter. Like, one of the things I find incredibly fascinating, especially again, being very involved with the kink and sex communities in my local area, is having gone to bigger events and getting to observe people in these spaces, getting my voyeur on. Um, but in that, I always find it really fascinating that men will tend to be so quiet in the spaces they are receiving pleasure. So, one of my favorite experiences with this was I was out at an event space. There was an area where I want to say there was about four couples engaging in sexual play in the space around me. And I was just sitting there observing what was going on. Um, and I was sitting there with a friend. And at some point, it turned to where all the males, and each couple was a male and a female, um, were receiving oral sex. Well, in that, I looked at my friend and like kind of like side whispered to him because it got so quiet in the room. And I was like, why are they all so quiet? And he was like, well, guys don't need to make as much noise as women do, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, I feel like they should try letting themselves make noise. Because when we're allowing sounds to move from our bodies, it can actually amplify our experience. Again, amplify our connection with the experience, not necessarily having to say words, but even like moans of pleasure. It also gives validation to your partner of the things you may like and the things you dislike. And it's been a consistent trend that I've noticed. And even before I ever started in like kinky or swinger type lifestyles, in that men tended to be very quiet and reserved when it came to expressions of pleasure, unless it was like at the very end at climax. And then like they might say some words or there might be more grunts and groans, but there wasn't any in the interim. And I find it fascinating. And I really want to encourage men to like tap into your primal sounds, tap into your grunts and your groans and your moans, and really let those things express and move through your body because it does amplify your experience in those spaces. It's kind of like I keep getting an image of my mind of like having a shackle on you, right? And this like very heavy weight connected to the chain, just like holding you down. Like you can still experience a huge amount, but you're also carrying around this like shackle and this huge like weight with you. And to me, when you release that shackle, so you let your voice, you let those sounds move through your body, it it allows a type of freedom. And that's again, it's freedom in expression, it's freedom in sounding, in being, in doing what's arising for you in the moment. And again, bringing presence to it without shame and just letting it be. There, again, it doesn't have to be formed words. Like I will admit that as a female, like when I very first ever had sex, I was so quiet, so incredibly quiet. I was worried about other people hearing me or that I might sound weird or um, that like my sounds wouldn't sound right and all sorts of different insecurities came up for sure in that space. But like again, if you're really like caught up on that and you're not secure in doing it with a partner, bring that to your own personal practice, whether that's a pleasure practice, masturbation practice, or just a meditative practice. And really, the way to do that is focus on different parts of your body and be like, and this may sound silly, and it is silly, like let yourself laugh at you as well. Like, it doesn't have to all be serious. Very much so, we take so much of life way too seriously. But like, focus on feeling into your big toe. Notice how the skin feels, notice how the toe feels inside. Like, bring as much focus to it as you can. And at some point, ask yourself, if my toe could make a sound right now, what would it be? And maybe a string of words comes to mind. Like maybe your toe has actual words to tell you, right? And maybe it's just like a purr or a grunt or a moan or a sigh, like any number of things. But you can do that for your left leg. You can do that for your testicles, for your pussy. You can do that for your cock. You can do it for your low belly. You can do it for your heart space. You can do it for your throat. You can do it for any part of your body. And the whole point here is one, have fun with it, please. Again, be willing to laugh at yourself and have fun with it. But it's just seeing what arises. You might be incredibly surprised at what comes up. Don't judge it, just be open to it and let it flow. I really think that's about what I've got for you guys on primal play and how to start connecting with that space and allowing yourself to create safety. As with anything, one of the best ways you can really help create like safety and trust in going into any of this is start like at the point that you feel you can start, right? So if the point you can start is you can bring very nuanced sensation to what you're seeing visually, start there and then start building on it. Play with your edge. Again, there are episodes in this podcast on playing with your edge. Go check those out if you want more information on how to start doing that. Um, if you want more one-on-one guidance around how to really connect in with your primal, building safety, gaining more knowledge, a huge variety of personal and customized tools that would be made just for you, you are more than welcome to reach out to me directly and we can work together so you can dive deeply into this space and be able to connect with it on much more profound levels than you probably ever imagined being able to. Until next time, it was amazing to have you all here. So thank you. I do want to add, what was your biggest takeaway from this podcast today? Like, what do you want to take with you moving forward in life or start implementing for yourself so you can start exploring your primal, amplify your experience here in this magnificent, crazy world, or just bring to your life in general because it sounds interesting? Drop that in the comments below, and I will see you next